My name is Chris Cisnowski. I'm actually the CEO of a company called WaterClick as well as Waterleaf. And we are going to talk about operational data management for water and wastewater. And thank you for the opportunity. So I'm sorry to have to rewind there for a second. So just a little bit about the outline. This is what we're going to cover in the next hour. A little bit of just a little bit of background. Little bit about small mid plants. A little bit about probably a lot of bit about the cloud, because this is what's a game changer for water and wastewater. And then we'll talk a little bit about risk and reward, because obviously there's risk in going into the cloud and getting involved in that. And then we'll talk a lot more about kind of different applications. So I think I have 2 or 3 case studies queued up, and depending on how much time we have. And then we're going to close by just talking about data management and how the cloud fits or doesn't fit for your community. So I'm going to pause really quick. I love asking for just if there's something in specific you want to hear about, I would love to hear that. So I'm going to pause and let you guys ask questions and just hey, could you tell me about, or I've heard about, or what about this company or something like that? Is there any sort of feedback that I can take notes on that we can make sure to cover?
On our CEUs.
I'm sorry, can you say that again? I heard somebody ask something. I didn't see who it was though. And okay. I guess if there's, I want to give a few seconds. I know it's awkward with the dead silence, but do you guys want to hear about Excel? Do you want to hear about the latest apps that are out there? Do you want to hear about companies that are helping? Just give me some guidance, and I'd love to jot it down.
Hey, Chris.
Yeah.
Uh, what if we dive into Excel and the latest apps?
Excel in what?
The latest apps.
Okay. Apps. Got it. Yeah, I can hit some of that. Appreciate that. So that's actually a really good cue for oops. My just brief comment about Zoom. So you guys probably know this, but when we do these training things, we're not compensated. So I do this because I've been in wastewater for 20 years. I know that getting decent training is hard, and everyone's got to get hours and that in. What you can do to help me is to ask questions or to interrupt. And with Zoom, it's super hard to interrupt because of the fraction of a second of a delay. But I want to encourage you guys to stop and ask questions. I don't mind talking for an hour, but it would be much better if we had just something to talk along the way. So I'm going to make 2 offers. Number 1, you can just put something into the Zoom chat if you're by yourself at your plant, or you're at your plant, you got whatever, just a couple of you sitting around the computer. Throw that into the chat and I'll see that, because sometimes it's kind of hard to interrupt a speaker. And then the second one is text me. So I'm gonna throw my number up on the screen with just a really crappily written thing here, and jot down my number, because after I leave this screen it's gonna go away. So that's my cell phone number. I would love it if people were to just text me questions and just say, can you back up and show me that again? Or can you go over this? I mean, this is your hour to make it useful. And if you're bored and falling asleep or like multitasking or whatever, that kind of sucks for you and it sucks for me. So I don't want that. So just text me a question or text me something interesting. And I think Brandy's got my cell phone number too because we emailed back and forth a ton. So if you don't jot this down, Brandy, you can probably pull it up on your phone and just give it to someone in the room there too. So that'd be super cool for me. That makes it a little bit more enjoyable for me too if I've got questions than if I'm just clicking through slides and talking. So, all right. So just really quick, what is WaterClick and Waterleaf? So WaterClick is I don't know how I clicked that quickly, but WaterClick is a platform that accelerates the digitization for small and mid utilities, and Waterleaf is a software product that helps utilities to manage their data. So I've been the CEO of Waterleaf for about 4 years now, and before this, I actually ran a SCADA systems integration business based out of McHenry County called Concentric Integration. I founded that company about 20 years ago with a couple other guys, and my good friend Mike Klein has taken over for me and is now the president of that organization. I left at the beginning of 2020, which was a great time to switch careers, by the way, to start to roll with this software company full time. So my full-time job is helping utilities get to digital. So this is like a sweet spot for me. At my heart, I am a wastewater person. So I actually worked for 3 summers and winters for the village of Lindenhurst, Illinois, which is far north in Lake County. And I was just sort of low man on the totem pole. Did whatever they asked me to, but got to hang out with a handful of cool operators, learn how to run a plant and a water system while I was there. So I've got operational experience as well as design experience, as well as kind of some management experience running a data company. So I think that when I show you this slide, it kind of tells you a little bit about me. So we live in rural McHenry County. So I'm on groundwater, my own private groundwater. And because I'm sort of a sensor data power nerd, so this is my water treatment plant at home. And these are all the different sensors and things that I have. So because I'm on private well, I had to kind of sweat in my own meter. So I just, if you see, look at right in the middle, and I think I can annotate while we're chatting here. Right in the middle of the screen here, that is a census, just a cheap census nutating disc meter. But strapped on it on the side is a device that reads that nutating disc and transmits those pulses to another little doodad that picks it up. I actually treat my water with some chemical oxidizer. We add a hydrogen peroxide to that to knock out the iron, because if I didn't, we would be drinking orange water. This is a filter that pulls out the iron, and then the water goes into an ion exchange device there, softener. I added pressure sensors all over the place because I want to observe pressure drop, head loss at different flow rates, because why not? And these are the 2 different power sensors that I have in my home too. So I use a product called Sense, which I'm going to show you a little bit more later. And so you can see at the top here, these are 2 sets of current transformers. One of them is wired, so you can see the wire come down and plug into the Sense right here, and the other phase kind of comes up here and hooks in up there. And then these other 2 sensors in the top are actually wireless CTs. So they read power that's coming into my house and transmit it wirelessly. They have no batteries. They're powered by the inductive current coming into the house. So I kind of live and breathe this stuff. I'm very fascinated by water and related data. So I promised I'd give you a little bit of a why are small and mid utilities different, and kind of a definition of what a small and mid utility is. So I guess, and maybe someone in the room can answer the question, what's the largest size utility that's attending the training today? Just like in terms of like MGD at the plant, just so I got a feel for the size.
We treat an average of 25 million gallons a day. During rain events, I've seen 161 mil come into our plant.
Giddy up. All right, and you guys are Peoria area?
Yeah, we are Greater Peoria Sanitary
Okay,
District.
great. So we would still categorize you as a mid-size utility. I mean, normally the only utilities we call large are like I say towns with pro sports teams in them. So Chicago, LA, New York, Las Vegas, Boston, Detroit, Miami, those we consider large utilities. So I'm the emphasis today is on what I call small and mid, but I would call Greater Peoria Sanitary a mid-sized utility too. I think that what makes them different, and I took this picture of a water treatment plant just a few weeks ago. This is in central Indiana. Um, I just think what makes the mid-sized utilities different is largely the staffing and the budget. So most small and mid utilities don't have like a dedicated data manager. And I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name from Greater Peoria.
My name's Jason.
Jason, do you guys have a dedicated data like analyst on staff? You guys have have anybody like that on staff?
I would call Jill probably. Yeah.
So you do. You have a full-time person that does like data management?
Yes, sir.
Okay, that's cool. I mean, most utilities don't have that luxury, but that usually is what differentiates kind of like your ability to get stuff done. But these are some kind of bullet points that have kept kind of small mid utilities from getting into data management better, and that's kind of the obvious things. Required investment has made like digitization and data management really expensive. So these projects can be very long and hairy, and traditionally to install servers and databases and asset management stuff. I'm sorry, was that a question?
I think somebody has their mic turned on
Yeah, that's no problem.
is talking to somebody
I'll
else
keep an eye out.
in the room.
Yep, no problem. Have a good trip. Yep, bye. I know. Bye. Bye.
It's all right. No big deal.
Hey, Chris.
Yes, sir.
Do you have the ability to turn everybody's mic off except for ours?
Yeah. Oop. Done. Done. Okay. That should be it. Thanks for that. Hopefully I didn't boot anybody out there too. Nope, we're good. All right. And so number 2, obviously digital data management and kind of all this technology for water and wastewater is complicated. Most of us prefer things simple rather than a gigantic number of features. New solutions in data management have traditionally targeted kind of the larger suburbs and big cities. Most of the hype that you see advertised like online from big companies are usually targeted at really large utilities, and typically those are not the right fit for like medium-sized and small utilities. So I think that the last one is probably obvious too. These smaller utilities typically don't have the technology infrastructure. A lot of times they don't have full-time staff who do data management. But mainly we're talking about servers and tech support and being able to get coverage and that sort of thing too. So those are the big things that keep us out of it. So these are sort of the... I have one more. The list of kind of cloud data management infrastructure that's good for our size utilities. Usually it's got to be simple. It's got to be usable. Has to be affordable, has to be supportable, durable, and compatible. These are not words that like ginormous utilities necessarily don't like, but they really apply to kind of our space. So we're going to talk a little bit about kind of data management and the cloud. And because this is sort of a game changer for utilities. Can this really help manage data? And I take a lot of pictures when I go to visit customers and clients and stuff like this. So most of these pictures are from me, but this is an operator obviously doing data collection using a tablet and a cloud-based app too. So I think I showed you earlier my my home stuff. These are the apps that I use. You'll probably recognize the photo on the left. That's the same water treatment. So I'm just going to start the video. So the little thing in the middle is my sense. So you can see the well pump kicked on, and I have a different view that can show me what is running in my house. So those two current clamps use some sort of fancy cloud hocus pocus to figure out what's on and what's off, and can help me to manage the power. And then it keeps track of how long things have been running for, how much I spend on power for a day, week, year, and that sort of thing. I also have a water app, so that water meter doodad does leak detection for me. So it's actually, in the year that I've had it, told me I have 2 leaks. Most of those leaks were very, very small. It just was the hose outside was left on to a trickle because it was leaking. But I got notifications. One of them, actually, I was out of the state and got a text essentially that said leak detected at home. I ended up texting the guy that we had paid to watch our dog while we were gone, and asked him if the outside hose happened to be on, and he texted me back and just said, I think his words were actually, "Dude, that was really creepy." Yes, it was. And it turns out he had watered the garden because my wife had asked him to water the garden, and the app knew that my hose was leaking. So, and I know a lot of us have seen, and by the way, the thing on the left, this is just a El Cheapo, I don't know, I think I bought one of those home webcams at Best Buy, and it had an infrared camera on it so I could watch for leakage, because you probably can't see it real well in the picture, but right here is where my condensate for my air conditioner, like the furnace, drains into the floor. And we've had that drain that goes into the sump stop working, and I've gotten some flooding. So this is a flood sensor on the floor, and with the camera I'm able to actually see if the ground is flooding. So, and I know these are sort of I think everyone's heard of most of stuff like this, but I guess the thing that's unique is that the total investment for all of this was $500. And so you look at all the fancy power monitoring, the leak detection, I can see how much water I'm using every hour of the day, all that stuff. That's not so cool when it comes to managing the data, but what's cool is that the cost was so low. So if you scale this up to water and wastewater, it's not so much of a big deal that we can manage power, we can manage flow, we can look at apps, we can use Excel. What's cool is that we can do a lot of that stuff for a lot cheaper. So before we get into the apps, and I still did write down Excel and apps, and I've got some examples I might be able to pull up and kind of show you. I want to point out that this is looking at 2015. And this is kind of as I looked in the consulting world about risk management and what we're comfortable putting in the cloud. In 2015, obviously email and spreadsheets, and we were starting to put GIS. We're starting to doing some reporting. But by the time we got to sensors in the field and alarming, historian, and kind of SCADA stuff, no one did it. Very few people, I should say, did it, because the level of risk was much higher in 2015. But this is only 6 years later. And this is what's happened. So the red is being pushed off. And so now what we're seeing is we got all this data to manage in our plants, but there's not much that we're not comfortable with putting in the cloud. I just as I'm going to ask for sort of a show of hands, so you'll have to unmute yourself. But is there anyone in the room that is has any part of SCADA or any part of being able to see anything live in your water wastewater system in the cloud today, in the room or in the class? I guess I will take that as a no. How about any data collection? Like, is anyone collecting data right now in the cloud?
And by cloud, do you mean like you're actually sending it to an off-site server? Is that what you mean by cloud? You didn't really define it.
Yeah. So I probably should have done a better job of defining the cloud. Just a server that's not owned by your utility. That's probably a cheap definition for now.
Jason, are you guys using the cloud for anything?
Our new system, Dave.
Lucity, yeah, we use Lucity.
Yeah, but it's Lucity.
It's more for the collection right now, but it's
But
gonna be,
isn't it a cloud base?
it is.
So yes, GPSD is.
So probably in this category here, you got your maps and doing some asset management. I think I heard Lucity.
Yeah, we use Lucity.
Anyone have any sensors in the field?
Yes.
What do we got sensor wise?
Ours is mainly flow. The sensors on pumps, they're running, not running.
So I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you said. What you're measuring?
Flow.
Oh, like a flow meter. And that goes up to a like a real time to a kind of a cloud-based data collection thing.
Well, in Galesburg, we're not using the cloud. Peoria is.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think that, and I ask these questions pretty pretty frequently, just what people have. And, 2 years ago, the only thing that people said yes to was like email and a little bit on GIS. Nobody had anything. So I'm going to give you examples of people that are doing all of these with some apps in the cloud today too. So and by the way, just as a point of interest, if you're looking at the screen, all the pictures that I have in the background are actual pictures of quote unquote the cloud. So when we say cloud, we typically mean like Amazon, Microsoft, Google, and all of these are pictures of their data centers across the U.S. So that's actually what they look like on the inside. Because when people say what is the cloud, I think it's kind of interesting to see what it is. So this slide is a little bit like what's good. So I'm not necessarily like a cloud evangelist, but I mean there are some benefits that I think when it comes to managing all this data. Obviously, the computing power, the speed that which we can get stuff kind of hooked up, the ability to access it anywhere with any device. Usually, the number one reason that drives water and wastewater utilities to manage data in the cloud is low capital cost. So we'll give you some illustrations later. This one is something that it's interesting. The shift of people's opinions on it, but I put way better security. I think the perception early on was that it's more secure to keep your stuff inside of your utility. But I think there was a famous phrase that kind of somebody coined a few years ago, and that is, who do you think does security better? Your community or Microsoft or Google or Amazon? And I think people start to realize that the security that we get on our phones through our banks and through some of the apps that we have the potential to be better security than not having that too. So now how about some of the fears? We fear it because we don't understand it. Again, I put the picture in the background because a lot of people have like no idea where their data lands when they put stuff in the cloud, but we don't understand it. It's kind of hard to get our arms around. And that
Hey,
kind of...
Chris,
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I've had a couple text messages from people that are trying to get in the meeting, and it says that they're waiting to be admitted.
All right, you know what I can do? Let me pause the recording. All right, so I was talking about kind of why we fear the cloud for data management here. Obviously, we lose control in a little bit. You know, when you shove your data up to the cloud, you're using someone else's app. You can't customize it in the way that you used to pay someone to do it. Kind of a big one that we all should be thinking about is right here. As I don't know if y'all in Central Illinois had the same gig, but like Comcast Xfinity Internet went down for like an hour and a half. Like, was it Monday or Tuesday this week? I think it was Monday, and I was actually really embarrassed. Like, I almost couldn't do anything. It was kind of sucky. And the weird thing that happened is, you know, obviously I got a cell phone and a tablet, and so I just set up my phone with a hotspot or whatever. And because Comcast was down, like all of the cellular was hammered. So like it was tough to get things through. I mean, emails were going through in that too, but like visiting websites and getting stuff done that way. So this is a big deal. We got to plan for what happens to our stuff when the internet is not available. And this used to be the biggest deal on the bottom, like we fear hackers, but thankfully, like a lot of the cloud infrastructure has gotten smarter and more secure, and with that comes a little bit better reliability. Is there anything on this list or either of these lists that I forgot? Anything that people love or hate about the thought of using the cloud to manage water wastewater data? All right. So we will dive into some apps. I'm glad you asked that because I do have a few things prepared, and I can actually deviate from the actual PowerPoint slide and actually show you their app and what they're doing. But this is the Village of West Dundee, Illinois, is probably about 9,000, 10,000 people. They have their own water system. They have 2 groundwater treatment plants that they feed water from 3 different wells. They do not have a wastewater treatment plant in town, but they obviously do wastewater collection, so they have a number of lift stations. And in as well as this site that you're seeing here. So you can probably see what most of you recognize there. That's a vent pipe. It's an underground, and I think I have a photo of it next here. So underneath that hatch is a wastewater partial flume. And just because I don't want to assume that everyone knows what these are and how they work, so this is an inlet sewer over here. So the wastewater is flowing this direction, and this is an ultrasonic level transducer. So it kind of throws some kind of high-pitched sound waves down. And what the way that a partial flume works is because of the hydraulics in this flume, the water goes up. Yes, I did, to answer whoever just texted me the question. So we are recording again. So the water goes up and down inside of the partial flume, and then that changes the level on this transducer. And the neat thing about a partial flume is that it's linearly proportional, which means that if there's like 2 inches in the flume, then it's like whatever, we'll just say 2 MGD, and if it's 4 inches, it's 4 MGD. And if it's 8 inches, it's 8 MGD. So that's really cool from an engineering perspective, and it makes it really easy to measure an open channel flow rate. So when it comes to how they're managing the data from this thing, this should look very familiar. This is a circular chart recorder. So there are so the data from that flume comes in right here. And there are essentially, this is a 4 to 20 milliamp signal that comes in. And you know what? What the heck? I'll give you kind of a better full tour here, because I got other pictures and people like seeing photos. So give me just a second. I'm going to pull them up. I'll give you more photos because I got a picture of what is inside of that box as well. So inside of that box, I was wrong which conduit it comes in. So it's coming in this one here. And so that's a 4 to 20 milliamp input on it. And so then this Anderson Hauser device has two outputs to it. One is what's called a pulse output, and the other one is a 4 to 20 milliamp out. So essentially it's the flow rate as well as a pulse for every X gallons of flow. So this is just what's behind the chart recorder in case you wanted to see that too. So what essentially is coming in here is that same 4 to 20 milliamp signal. And if we go back to the presentation here on the outside, you can see they have the flow rate. And there's also a flow rate here. And I don't know if can I zoom in? Hang tight. Let me just see if I can do that. It's got a totalized flow reading there. So it says 2593.63. So that's the flow totalizer. So it's keeping track of both the total flow as well as the flow rate. Because I love this community, they're super smart. They wanted a way to be able to see that reading without having to be at that hut, because you saw it was in the middle of a cornfield. So the operators bought a camera from Best Buy that does IP, and they took some gas pipe, painted it white, and mounted a camera so that it watches the flow meter reading. And if we back up, like on the slides here, you can actually see on the top of the hut is, it might be kind of small, is an antenna. So they're shooting that Wi-Fi signal over to the other plant. So number one, I think that's freaking awesome that they figured out how to get the data over to the other plant, but it's just like they have to pull up like a web page to look at it. It's obviously not recording anything, but it was a super cool, simple, low cost way to get the data from a remote site that the operators did themselves with some help from their IT guys. So I think in the last slide, I said this is awesome, but it's kind of circa 1990 whatever technology, obviously with those paper chart recorders, but we see those things all over the place. So enter kind of their app. So with every kind of new innovation, obviously we need hardware to still interface with it. So this is a multi-tech modem. This is a signal isolator down here that just makes sure that the signal's coming in, we'll just call it cleanly. On the side of the panel here, they added a humidity and temperature sensor so that they could see how warm that building was, because they actually have a sampler that pulls the samples and they can't have it freeze, so it's got a heater in there, and they wanted to be able to track temperature and humidity inside the building too. So this whole box cost them $1,200, so very low cost. And even though the company actually came out to help them install it because they were piloting it with us, they could have installed it themselves. All it was is just pulling this wire and hooking it up to the terminals that the manufacturer told them to hook it up. And then you can see here they wired in this stuff, but the rest of the box came to them. So even though there's a lot of high-tech stuff, we still got a hardware interface. But I'm going to deviate from my annotation here, and because you actually wanted to see the app, what I could do is turn annotation off, and I made this clickable, and we're going to jump into the actual web app. So this is a company called Blue Pillar. Again, I'm not trying to commercially endorse, but to show you examples, I need to show you what people are using. I'm going to zoom in a little bit here so you can see this. So this is that flume out in the middle of nowhere. So they spent $1,000 on a doodad that just reads pulses, and they actually are wiring in they have a door switch and a float switch for flooding, and then low temperature alarm. But you can see here they have the live temperature as well as the flow rate coming out of the flume, updates every few seconds, as well as the humidity, and they have that pulsed total flow. Of course, they have a very simple trend, and this is actually a great example because you can see what happens. This is fed. I'd quiz you if I was in the room, but I think most of us would probably recognize what it looks like when an upstream lift station turns on and off. So that's what this is. This is a lift station upstream of that flume that's kicking on and kicking off during the day. At night, because it's fed mostly by residential, by about midnight, the pump station stops kicking on and it's just filling. And then in the morning, this is a second pump kicking on or a third pump kicking on. And these are those pumps kicking on and off. So this is a live real-time trend. So they can look over longer periods of time. And so they have all this trending. So this is sort of a replacement for their circular chart recorder. But I just want to point out, that's nothing new. I'm sure all of you have this in SCADA, and you can get this. But the SCADA firm that works for them quoted them $15,000 to include this into SCADA. And so for $1,000 plus, I think, don't quote me, but maybe $400, $500 a year, they're getting this data. So that's one piece of it. They have they had low temperature alarms. This is just it's getting cold here, but just the first low temperature alarm about a week ago kick off too. So I'm gonna pause and just ask if there's questions on the app that I'm showing you. And seeing none. So here's the other side of what they're doing, and this is my company. So what the village is doing, they're collecting data for all of their remote sites. So about 3 years ago, they used to have, I don't even know, 10 clipboards, pencils, paper, all over the place. The superintendent had probably 15 Excel spreadsheets that he used to manage. So you can see they had all these different sites that they were managing data. And so this forward flume site that has that blue pillar device integrated in it, they wanted that data clicked into another app. So again, this is like new school data management. Old school would be like you had to pay somebody to like write some software, write some widget on your SCADA server, or do some programming to combine it. But because both of these apps are cloud-based, we were able to include it. So you can actually see, so this is today. They've done their rounds for today. And this is the blue pillar device that is feeding data. And right now they're still collecting the data manually because they wanted to make sure that it was the same. You can see plus or minus about 1,000 gallons, a couple thousand gallons here. It's accurate. So that device, that blue pillar device, is feeding its flow rate into another cloud-based app. So they're able to then combine that data from blue pillar with all the rest of this data that they're collecting. So this is just their water treatment plant. They're collecting data manually. So whereas they used to use pencil and paper to do this, they're now using, I think they have 3 iPads or 2 iPads or whatever that they go around, and they collect data on the tablet, and they combine that data with the data that's coming in from blue pillar, and then they get whether it be their monthly operating reports for their water treatment plants or their wastewater lift stations. I want to find forward, and I'll just run this so you can see what it is. So this is that data that we saw on that other screen just in a monthly operating report. So you can see here that's the totalized value. But so this is both manual data and cloud-based data and calculated data, all integrated. And the village paid, yeah, again, like I think it was about $1,000 up front and a few $100 a year to incorporate that data. Pause again for questions. All right. How am I doing on time? Got about 10, 15 minutes. Is that still correct? We're quitting at noon. I mean, I'm sorry, 10?
Yes.
Okay, great. So I got time for at least one more, maybe 2. So this is another example, another community that is actually real close to me here. This is the village of Huntley. And their existing data management probably looks like 95% of you guys. They have Allen Bradley PLCs in here. They have a more modern fiber-based infrastructure. So you can see here, this is their fiber feed coming in. So this little panel right here is their fiber communication. So that's probably not new so much anymore. They're using an Allen Bradley PLC to aggregate data. Excuse me. So just a little bit more background. They were a mixture. They got a simple lab, and they're using lab bench sheets, Netgear switches, and all kinds of, let's see. They were using a custom app for managing their data that my previous firm made for them, and it was running on an on-premises server. So this was they called it the reporting server. So they were able to kind of manage their data when it came to, clarifier runtimes and lab data and all that stuff on their computer, but they were still using bench sheets to transmit that. And then they had this custom built app. I think the total cost for the app over about 4 years was about $50,000. So it was probably about a $20,000 project to build it, and then over the year to maintain it. They had to buy a server that was about $8,000. And then over the course of about 5 years, you figure a server costs about another $8,000 to maintain, because they have to be patched, they have to be backed up, they got to have antivirus, they have to have a disaster recovery plan, all that other junk. Now, so they have also shifted to using the Waterleaf app here too. And oops, just want to show you their application because everyone's a little bit different. Hang tight here. So Huntley is 100% paperless in their data management inside of their wastewater plant. I'll zoom in a little bit so you can see how they work here too. So they come in here, they select a date. The operator does rounds in the plant on a tablet. They record everything from totalizers and that too. And then they have lab staff that come in here, and this is where they put in SVIs, mixed liquor, suspended solids. So this is not a LIMS app per se, like it's not a laboratory management system, but they're just using it to eliminate paper and use it for data collection. And then for them, let me show you another photo here. Bear with me for just a second. So the doodad they're using is right here. So this little thing on the left, what this does is it takes data one way from your SCADA network. It puts it through essentially just like a firewall. Just think like it's like a data check valve, right? And this pushes the data out to the internet and pulls the data into other apps too. So they have the same kind of features that Blue Pillar has, but just through a little bit different of an appliance. So this costs them about $1,500 a year. They had no charge for the device, and it pushes the data into all of their different flow readings as well. So that think of it like it's like a one-way push of SCADA to the cloud. And that device is the E1 Flexi 205 if you just want to Google it and take notes, or you can hit me up for a link later and I'd be happy to send it to you. So again, what they're doing here is they're combining their laboratory data for BODs, TSSs here. You can see these are all their BOD calcs. And the money that they're after here is just getting their DMRs. So give that just a second to run here. And they have 2 wastewater plants in Huntley, a little bit larger population. They have Wonderware SCADA software, Allen Bradley PLCs, but they have pretty good IT and cloud kind of infrastructure. They have a handful of Apple iPads that they use to manage all this data, access their GIS. They are using ArcGIS online services. And then this is their final result. So this is just their discharge monitoring report. I know this is not very exciting, But the fact that they don't have to run this manually and they don't have to collect all the data manually and it does all the math for them, does all the formatting for them is usually what's considered pretty cool about their app. I'll pause again for questions. I'm trying to think if I can pivot and show you something else app-wise. I do have maybe some examples of some Excel wizardry too. I think you guys had mentioned that. If I can just pause my screen sharing for a minute, give me just a second to pull it up. But I'd love to just take a few minutes and just take some questions. Guys, please give me some questions. Throw some things at me about the cloud, security. I mean, obviously, when communities go paperless and start leveraging the cloud, it's some big shift for the operators in that too. So I'd love to take some just human questions about what it took these communities to get there. And I'm happy to put you in touch with the wastewater operators or the superintendents if you have questions too, because I think you can learn a lot just by getting introduction to somebody. But I'm going to pause for questions while I'm pulling up some spreadsheets here. So thanks, David kind of dropped a little thing into the chat. How much flexibility do end users have in editing the interface and adding the future devices themselves? David, that is an awesome question, because what's happened over the last couple of years with the cloud is people like it because it's simple. So the devices that I showed you are self-installable by operators. Typically, you have to have a decent amount of basic electrical knowledge. Like, obviously, you don't want to poke around in the panel. But all of the devices that I showed you are self-installable. So that's probably different from where, in the olden days, you had to hire your integrator to come out. A lot of these devices ship in, and because they're Ethernet, they just kind of plug in. You just got to know what ports to plug in. So in terms of the interface in Waterleaf software, that is configurable by customer. I kind of blew through it really, really quick because this is not supposed to be a commercial, but they can essentially add sites and metrics and processes and components, and they can make their own reports and configure those to be whatever they like. So from the end user standpoint, they can make it however they like. It cannot be like custom coded by customers. So that's the flip side of the cloud, is like that blue pillar. They can add and change alarms. They can drill in, drill out, make their own reports, but they can't reconfigure the interface. So I'll pause again. Any other questions vocally from anyone? All right, I will reshare my screen here as soon as I can find my Zoom console again. So this is the Fountain Hills Sanitary District, which is located in Fountain Hills, Arizona. And they are a medium-sized utility as well. Maybe a few MGD in their wastewater plant. They're kind of interesting because they don't discharge to a stream, which for those of us in Illinois is like, what? They discharge to, they have recharge groundwater. So this is just really quick. They were nice enough to send me a schematic of their treatment plant. So that is their plant. And then let me just shift over to show you their Excel wizardry. So I got this all laid out, and they have a number of spreadsheets that they use to manage. And I think I'll kind of dispense some tips here. If you're using Excel to manage your facilities, I like this as an example because their data is clean. In fact, they actually have all their spreadsheets kind of numbered in order. And then every, like for some of these are their, give it just a second. These are their injection wells, so they are taking their wastewater and injecting it back into the ground. They have, in this case, everything very clean across the bottom. The other thing I like about managing data in Excel when it's clean is that for the future, it's easy to pull data out in like a column and combine it together. So if you needed to have like an annual spreadsheet, what I don't like about Excel is if you need to produce, let's say, an average of the year of the injected flow rate for this well number 1, you have to copy and paste data off of 12 spreadsheets. And you can see here, they have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different wells. So you spend a lot of time copying and pasting and lining data up. So their monthly process control, I like this as an example because, again, it's clean. They don't, when you look at the data, it's all lined up, it's color coded. What I don't like about it that's confusing, and let me just hit this here really quick. What I both like and don't like, oops, sorry, now I'm getting a whole bunch of errors here. Oh boy, now I've made it mad. Is that you can see here they're referencing other spreadsheets. So they are both smart in that they've been consistent in the naming of the spreadsheets, so they're able to link spreadsheets together. And it's created a little bit of a rat's nest of kind of, and I think these are their words, Excel hell, where they're actually having a tough time to keep track of all the data. So I know we're kind of short on time here. I can't dive in deep, a little bit more deep, but this is what most everyone kind of sees every day, just in terms of using the formulas, min, max, and average in here. But I think that just keeping your data clean and organized and taking the time to kind of create, like, whether it be all of your spreadsheets in a month in one folder, or just making sure that things are named cleanly is pretty important. So I do have a little bit of a closing here. This is questions to assess kind of data management cloud. Things to ask vendors, and I'm just going to screen through the different questions there. And obviously this is recorded so you can play this back. But I like to ask these questions when I'm dealing with vendors that do data management for utilities. Before you trust your data in the cloud, you want to know the answers to these questions. And just for the sake of time, because hopefully this will get a couple of you to laugh, this is our slide that we teach. I actually help coach some vendors in how to do a better job selling to water and wastewater utilities. And we hear a lot of the phrases on the left, and we try to coach them and teach them what many of us that have been in water and wastewater for years hear them say when they use stupid words. So this is where it kind of sucks. I'm on Zoom because I have no idea if you're laughing or if you think this is stupid. But we find these funny. I've heard all vendors say these things on the left, and I remind them that usually when we hear them say it, it's a little bit different than what they're saying. So with that, I'll take questions, thoughts.
This is Todd Bennett. I'm with the Illinois EPA, and I was just wondering if you, looking ahead to the US EPA e-reporting rule and all of these things that are transitioning to electronic reporting, how do you see all of this kind of tying into meeting those upcoming requirements?
Yeah, that's a
NPR is kind of the first step toward, and I was just curious on your thoughts on that.
Yeah, that's like probably a conversation for an hour or two at a bar, but I'll try to answer it in 20 seconds. There's two sides. Obviously, the drinking water reports up to something called CIDWIS at the federal level, which many of you are probably aware of. But many states in the U.S. Actually already support electronic submission of data. So we're working in Pennsylvania. They have an electronic format. Wisconsin has an electronic format. I think the problem for a lot of us is like those formats are different and complicated. So I guess from a hopeful standpoint, electronic data submission is something that many industries have been doing for many years. I think water and wastewater tends to just be a little bit more conservative. So I didn't show it to you, but like in Waterleaf, we fully support like an electronic data output file. So I think that's what you're going to see as like an interim, is that these apps, these smart data management apps, will support like an exporting into a file. So a lot of people like CSV, even though it's a really old format, but it's kind of easy to define. So I think you'll see some interim solutions. In fact, I don't want to overstep my bounds, but like a lot of the local regional offices for drinking water started accepting even electronic PDFs, and then they just print them out to kind of meet the letter of the law. So and obviously with NetDMR and that, we've got opportunities for electronic formats. But what I'd like to see, and I guess the call to the vendors, is make it simple for operators, man. I don't want to see people having to format data at a wastewater plant. I think that should be done in the app. So hopefully that's enough feedback, but like, you know, yeah, I would love to chat about it more. But I think for operators, it's a hopeful future. So any other questions? I mean, I don't have to run to anything, but I will throw my screen up. If you've got a phone, you can actually scan that QR code and it's my business card. Or if you're just into the analog world, you can write down my number too. That works as well. I don't think I got any texted questions. Double check here. Yep. Well, if there are no other questions, I will hang out on the Zoom. So if the people that are not in Peoria there want to engage and kind of have more of a one-on-one discussion and just ask questions about it. But obviously I've been doing this for 20 plus years, and I love water, wastewater, and love to talk about kind of helping people collect data and make it simple too. So I appreciate everyone's attention, and hopefully I didn't make it too boring for you guys, but would love, obviously, for us, the hope is that we get a chance to engage one-on-one with a few different utilities and maybe help you guys manage your data. But regardless, I appreciate the opportunity, Brandy and Jason and everyone that kind of hosted this and got it together. Hopefully the tech from your side was okay and you could hear me enough. Appreciate everyone's attention.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So if anyone else is still on the Zoom thing, happy to hang out. If you guys got questions or want to see something or dig in a little bit deeper, I'll hang out for a couple minutes here.